Welcome back, scary story fanatics, to Cleaving Thought from Bone with your host, Sociopathic. I was thinking maybe it's time to stop being so serious and start acting a little childish. After all, you can't spell dysfunctional without fun. And what's more dysfunctional than a toy gone wrong? The answer may be more complex than you think. So, grab your blankies and ask Mom and Dad if you can stay up late. It's time for a playfully terrifying tale that I like to call I Bought My Daughter a Toy Robot Dog.
What is madness? Is it simply a state of delusions, a definition tossed about by psychologists who really have no idea what it is they claim to know so much about? Or is it a simple deviation from an expected norm? Normal, of course, is a construct of what the majority of individuals perceive the world to be. A utilitarian perspective for perspective. Simply, what is normal to the greatest number of people? Well, that's all fine and dandy for most individuals, the ones safeguarded within that vast majority. But what about the exception to the rule? What if your reality, the actual reality that surrounds us all, perceived or not, contrasts that of the majority? Well, in that instance, you would be mad, delusional, insane. See, sanity, insanity, they're just relative constructs as well. So that means the reality that you perceive around you is only contingent upon your expectations and understandings of it. The true nature of the beasts we call normal, sane, reality are tethered by your weak explanations of them. Those explanations are only a feeble attempt to understand the dark, mysterious world that surrounds you. Of course, I don't expect you to completely understand what I mean. How could you? But this brings me to the heart of the matter. Why I'm typing all this out, even though I'm sure it will be taken as the ravings of a madman or the demented justifications of a lunatic. But in a way, whether you believe me or not, I'm changing your expected norm, what you perceive as normative. And by the end of this, if you're left thinking, at the very least, what if? I'll have performed this task successfully. And if not, well, maybe, just maybe, you'll understand why I did what I have to do. I guess it all started the day we got home with the damn thing. I didn't exactly realize it at first, but looking back, the signs were surely there. My daughter begged me to buy her this robot dog from the flea market, and when I say flea market, don't underestimate. I mean the biggest flea market in the state. It's really a lot of fun to attend. Fresh produce, archaic and antiquated items, all for bargain prices, a live band, and more. It's more of an event than just a typical flea market. My daughter, Sarah, had been passing by many objects all day as we walked and eyeball shopped, asking for either trinkets too cheap and flimsy to be worth even $1, to the overpriced items that I would have gotten for her if I thought them to either be appropriate or would actually be played with by her. Naturally, I denied many of these requests, but when she passed by a shiny, black and white, robotic dog with shiny black eyes and Dalmatian-style markings, she fell in love. "Can I have it, Daddy, please?" she begged. I told her it would depend on the price. Walking up to the fat man behind the counter, who reminded me a little bit of a carny who you might see working the funhouse or Ferris wheel at a local carnival, and I asked him how much it would take for him to part with the little trinket. $5, he said. Okay, for that price, even if the thing didn't work, it was worth my daughter's happiness. I paid him the money owed and handed the toy to my little girl. For the rest of the time at the flea market and the entire ride home, my world was filled with the noises of digitally simulated barking and heartfelt giggles and laughter emanating from my precious little girl. When I opened my eyes, it was black. I had fallen asleep around 10 or so and was still unable to focus on the alarm clock just yet. I had no clue what time it was or what had awoken me. First rubbing my eyes and then squinting, I noted it to be 2:37 a.m. I sighed in frustration and fatigue. I would have to be at work in only 4.5 hours. I rested my head on the pillow, being sure to flip it over to lay on the cooler side, and shut my eyes in an attempt to go back to sleep. I shot my eyes open and listened intently to the darkness shrouding my home. Nothing. No more sounds. I slowly sat myself forward, propping myself up with my arms, peeking my line of sight past the end of my bed, in line with my slightly ajar bedroom door. My skin felt suddenly cold, my focus locked with acute trepidation, and if someone had taken a picture of me at that exact moment, I'm almost positive that I could have reported that I had turned a pale shade of white. What I saw in the doorway was enough to put a sudden, strong fear into me, but it was a fear that dissipated pretty quickly. Sure, those digital, red eyes seemingly gawking right back into my own was enough to give my heart a startle, but when I realized it was just the little robotic pet that I bought for my daughter, my heart rate settled back to something more normal. Though in that moment, I did find the incident curious, as although the thing did have some movement capabilities, I had no idea that it had the capacity to autonomously make its way out of my daughter's bedroom, all the way down the hall, and make its way to my room. But I suppose it is plausible that this could have been the case, and such is which I decided. But before I broke stare with the robo-dog, the thing said something. It didn't speak, I suppose, in the normal sense of the word, but more in a recorded, digital voice, similar to a raspy, robotic kind of voice spoken through a small speaker at a very low volume, like the thing was whispering at me. That couldn't be right. I had to be hearing things in some kind of half-awake, half-sleeping state. I rolled from my bed, tossing the covers aside, being as careful as possible not to wake my wife, and made my way towards the door and the electronic pet in the open aperture. I bent down, gripped the smooth, cold, rigid plastic in my hands, and lifted the thing to eye level, inspecting as I closely could in such poor lightings. Kill her. The thing now only inches from my face. There was no mistaking it this time. It had definitely emanated words at me, though the context of those words was still arguable in my mind. I didn't know which her it had meant, but there was no way it could have possibly told me to commit murder. Could it have? Kill your wife, the thing whispered to me again, those electronic, red eyes staring lifelessly maniacally into mine. "What? No!" I yelled out. My sudden outburst had caused my wife to stir. Not enough to wake her up, but she tossed and groaned, as if on the cusp of awakening. I shook my head, squinted my eyes, and composed myself once again. There's no way this thing is talking to me. I must be half asleep or something, I considered internally. Looking back into those bright, red eyes and not hearing any of the sounds I half expected to, I reasoned myself overtired and proceeded down the hall to Sarah's room to put the trinket back where it belonged, hoping I'd be able to finally get the rest I needed. Stepping only a couple of feet past the threshold of my daughter's bedroom door, I bent down and gently placed the toy at the bottom of her bed on the floor, quietly so as to not disturb her. Assured my imagination had been running wild, content within the boundaries of my normative perceptions and the world in which every human in civilized society lives, I left my daughter's bedroom, unaware of the blissful ignorance in which I was engaged. As I turned the corner and began the short walk back down the hallway to my room, I could have sworn I heard a whisper emanating from my daughter's room behind me, something like, "You're going to do it, you know," or something like that. I stopped where I stood, halting my progress, and turned my head to face the hall behind me. There was nothing. No other sounds. No red eyes in the dark. It was as if the entire world had gone silent. Whether I was truly being haunted by a child's plaything or just plain delusional from fatigue, it didn't matter either way. The stone-cold fact was that I needed sleep. So I picked up where I left off and headed back to the room. The next thing I knew, I was standing over the sleeping form of my wife, holding a butcher knife. Like I didn't even remember walking into the room, never mind having gone and grabbed a knife from the kitchen. It was as if I had blacked out halfway down the hall and came to in my current position. Somewhat stunned and searching for an explanation, I looked in the direction of the clock. 4:13 a.m. It made sense. It was still pitch black outside, but how I had managed to lose almost 2 hours made none. Shaking, I lowered the knife to my side, both grateful that I had come to my senses and terrified at my recent loss of control. "Do it! Do it, you fucking pussy!" I heard that robotic voice bark at me. I turned my head to see those beady red glowing eyes staring up at me from the bottom of the bed. I knew what I had to do. I reached out and picked the thing up in my hands, screaming at it, breaking off bits of plastic from its mechanical body, tossing the thing to the ground and stomping on it until all that remained was a pile of small shards of plastic, bits of metal, and small lengths of wire. I had effectively destroyed the thing. However, in the process, I had awoke both Sarah and my wife. Sarah meeting my gaze in the front door, while my wife sat up in bed, just staring at me, not saying anything at first. I had to secure them, at least just long enough for me to type out this confession. I know no one will believe me. I know you won't believe me, but it does me good to at least get this off my chest, to get my side of the story out there. Because I'm sure once the police find me, covered in the blood of my murdered family, they won't believe me when I tell them this story. Just like I'm sure you won't. But from my perspective, what's perceived is normative to me, and it all makes perfect sense. The eyes of my wife and daughter glow red now, like the ones of that demonic plaything, and just like it, they too must be destroyed. Pray the world around yours stays fake. Pray the experiences you seek stay right here. behind your monitors where they can't really hurt you, because a more defined, truer reality lays beyond the shroud of mystery and belief, and once you step foot into it, there is no turning back.
So remember, when you buy at the flea market, and even if the toy breaks, or decides to murder you and your entire family, there is no refund. So make sure you buy all your toys at top quality superstores like me, just to be safe. Wait a minute, didn't this thing need new batteries? Anyway, make sure to drop in again next weekend for some playful and horrifying exchanges. And until then, make sure to like, share, subscribe, and turn on notifications so I can catch you all again next Saturday.